Welcome. This is Suyana Cole offering the discussion of the workbook and content from Chapter 7 entitled Imagine from the book The All-Inclusive Approach, The Art of Divine Remembrance. So if you have been moving through these chapters with me up until this point, it might start to be becoming clear to you this is a progression of concepts that build on one another. In Chapter 6, we were discussing how everything within you is by design. You already have that which is necessary for you to live the most fulfilled, aligned, and empowered life. And also, knowing that doesn't change the arc of evolution, learning, growth, and development that we are all experiencing. It's not like being aware of that just poof makes all challenges, struggles, difficulties, and uncertainty go away. The chapter we're getting ready to discuss right now, it is one of the more difficult concepts to digest because it really asks you to abandon this idea that you are creating your life from the self that is here in a finite experience in a body as an individual. And I think one of the reasons it can be challenging is because it is coming on the heels of really inviting you to claim the power that you have of perception, focus, intentionality. So I wonder, for those that have shared that it was difficult and they felt a lot of resistance within themselves about this particular chapter, if they were trying to reconcile those things, the truth of embodying one's power while also accepting that a power originates in an eternal self. And that eternal self chose the circumstances that you would be born into, the family that you chose to be impressed upon in your early years, the skills and talents that you would have, the challenges and obstacles you might have put in front of you to distance yourself from being able to embody and express those skills and talents. Your tendencies to abandon yourself, if all of that was created intentionally, if none of it was wrong, then how would that change how you operate in the world? How you saw yourself, how you saw others? How would it affect your relationships? How would it affect the choices that you make, the roles that you have taken on, that you continue to operate within? This is like one of those chapters, I feel like, where the rubber really meets the road. Because now we're really looking at some broad concepts. And here's the reflection or summary of chapter 7. If you're not listening to it right after, we can reorient ourselves into the concepts in this chapter. This chapter invites you to shift your perspective on life's unfolding, to see yourself not just as the actor, but also the conscious creator of your own story. What if everything you experience, from the most joyful moments to the most challenging ones, was intentionally woven into the fabric of your evolution? What if, rather than resisting or rewriting your script, you could embrace each scene as part of your character's growth? By accepting your circumstances as purposeful, rather than as evidence of failure or lack, you open yourself to the profound realization that every aspect of your life serves a higher purpose. This isn't about resigning to fate. It's about stepping fully into your role as both the author and the experiencer of your journey. When you stop longing for an alternate reality and instead align with the story already unfolding, you free yourself from resistance and step into true presence. And I know at this point, even sentences that include higher purpose can create a association of hierarchy. But I'm not talking about it as in I'm lower and there's something higher, bigger, more beyond me that I'm separate from. It's more about seeing that this mysterious version of existence that we're in right now. One of those parameters that we exist within is the mysteriousness, the forgetfulness. That too has value here, because what would be the purpose of choosing trust if you knew everything that was about to happen? If you could see the unfolding of every single manifestation before you in your life, I don't know how growth and evolution could be as potent and powerful if that's how things operated. Like, I know people who are extremely intuitive, who have little to no idea what to expect in their own lives. That gift is reserved for supporting others. And then in their experience, they will be facing decisions and unknown factors with the same level of mystery that the person that is coming to see them is feeling about their life. I just find that dynamic so fascinating. It's true for me too. I can do a session with someone and get so much clarity around certain things going on in their life, what's active in their system when they come to connect with me. And then be done with that session and be like, what should I do with my life? What decision should I make about this thing or this other thing? Knowing that I could make another decision, and then another decision and another decision. Like, making one decision doesn't mean that that's what I'm going to have to continue to make that decision that same way over and over and over again. And then, of course, when you think of like the chapter outlines, that the decisions really are already made and we're just acting out the play of our life, then it can take a lot of the pressure off and you can meld into the mystery. You can flow into the mystery and be swept away with the story of your life unfolding. Not that your character or the actor playing the character isn't at times going to question, how do I play this scene out? What is my motivation? That's a big one for me. What is my motivation in this moment? And how will I approach this? And this way, decisions don't have to feel so heavy. It's more of a revealing, an uncovering, as opposed to a right and wrong choice that you're going to be punished for in the future or rewarded for in the future. Which, as a character who felt that way for a really long time, can cause decision paralysis, right? And hypothetically speaking, what if those are the moments that we are sitting in the trailer refusing to come to set? You know? I would imagine that life has designed itself in a way that, because free will is such a dominant energy in this particular reality of consciousness, that there is a built-in system that allows for staying in the trailer and refusing to play the part, and how uncomfortable that becomes, and how dissatisfying it can be to be hauled up in protest unwilling to move your life story forward. Just some food for thought. Just some food for thought. Yeah. This is a question I've been asking myself for a bit. I spent a year kind of in hermit mode, restructuring and re-evaluating the direction of my life. And there were times where I thought, am I disengaging from the momentum that my story is asking me to activate? And when I look back, I think, no, that was some inner work that was necessary to prepare me for the things I'm doing now. However, at the time, I really would question whether or not I was having a hauled up in my trailer, unwilling to come to the set moments. And mostly that was because it took longer than what I had thought it was going to take. I didn't think that the process I knew I was entering was going to take as long as it did. So again, that mysterious component was something I had some resistance to. And like I've said before, knowing these things doesn't mean that we won't forget and go into some old operating systems that are more about control and comfort and security than they are about growth, expansion, and contribution. Some of our contributions are working through themes that maybe the egoic self would prefer not to be engaging in at all, bypassing that commitment that the soul made to further a theme, to develop a concept, to evolve a pattern in consciousness that is being played out here in this particular realm. So this is what this invitation is creating congruency between the parts of us that are fully aligned in the flow state and the parts of us that feel disoriented, disgruntled, resistant, suspicious. The negotiator comes up to my mind right now too, who the part of you that will negotiate with life. As if life doesn't know everything that is being played out, its value, and what your truest intentions are. This is something I find to be so true, and it is shown to me over and over and over again, is that there is just no way to hide motivation, intention, truth from consciousness, because that's what it is. And our resistance, I think, is met with a great deal of compassion and acceptance and acknowledgement from everything that is not in form, everything that doesn't have a tether to a finite sense of self. The parts of us that want all of those reassurances are the finite parts, the one that feels like its existence has an expiration date. So when phrases like higher purpose come around, if that perks up inside of you, this idea that you're down, this is up, you're here, the knowing is over there, then I'm just putting it on your radar to invite in the idea that there is no separation. And that the majority of you is fully aware of every aspect of your experience and its potency and its validity and its purposefulness. And then we have these like beautiful selves that know how precious their existence is because it's finite. And that causes us to put a lot of importance on things. And I think that that's intentionally built into this system, that we would feel the weight of our decisions and vacillate between different options and lament over the time some things take to manifest, because that is part of the richness that exists in this particular reality. And if we can maintain a sense of cohesiveness between the finite self and the infinite self, and make our way to not seeing it as a personal attack or a reward for being a good little boy or a good little girl, then it just becomes a succession of experiences that you can reflect on and have any kind of relationship with those experiences that you choose. You know, I could look back at my life and say, oh, I've gotten a divorce, you know, I have a failed marriage. Or I can look at it and be like, I learned so much through the relationship that I had in the marriage that I experienced earlier in my life. And the choice of closing that chapter of my life and opening a new chapter, for me, it doesn't feel like a failure. It feels like a progression. But it didn't stop me from feeling parental guilt for not having my son have, you know, a father figure in his life for a lot of his life. And some of that was based on the kind of work his father did. He was gone a lot. And then, of course, some of it was because we didn't live in close proximity to his father certain years in his upbringing, and that facilitated even more distance between the relationship that they could have cultivated if we were right down the road, for example. So I can have the capacity to hold all of those things, I guess is what I'm saying. And that feels really expansive and, again, nourishing. It feels really nourishing to be so inclusive about the part of me that feels like she wronged her son, and the part of me that knows that this story couldn't have unfolded any other way, and that relationship with his father was meant to be a season of their life, not the foundation of it. I'm sure you have similar situations in your life that have a multitude of different tones and are colored differently based on what perception or perspective you're looking at it from. And to have all of those things be welcomed into the vast richness of living, it just feels so much more soothing to my nervous system, to my mind, to my emotional body, to my relationship with my infinite self than a different approach. The journal prompts that are accompanying chapter 7 are as follows. Number 1, imagine for a moment that you chose everything in your life exactly as it is for your greatest growth. And this can be applied specifically to an area you feel a lot of resistance, if that's what comes up first, but I do encourage you to cycle through the different areas of your life and have this inclusive perception and perspective of them, all of them. How does this perspective shift your relationship with your current challenges and successes? How does deciding that you already chose everything that you're experiencing facilitate a deepening and an opening in the relationship you have with all of these different things, all these different manifestations, circumstances, dynamics? Question 2, what inner conflicts or reoccurring doubts seem to drive your personal storyline? What do you keep revisiting as a truth, which, in all honesty, is really just a habitual thought pattern? And I'm not making light of these things because it really can happen without any effort. It can quickly just be the runaway train, these entrained thought patterns and belief systems. But having the presence just to be aware of it and be the observer of it is a discovery process worth having. The follow-up question for that one, what inner conflicts or reoccurring doubts seem to be driving your personal storyline, is how might they be valuable catalysts rather than obstacles? And we're not sugarcoating our lives here. We are bringing a sense of value to all the things that are existing because they are, in fact, expressions of consciousness, as are you. Journal prompt number 3, reflect on a time when something you resisted turned out to be a blessing in disguise. How does that experience inform how you see your current reality? And if you can think too, if you're already oriented in this way, or this is something that you already practice, is noticing the gap between when something happens and when you start to orient yourself into seeing it as valuable. Sometimes it happens immediately, sometimes it's days later, sometimes it's years later. Some things, it feels like a betrayal almost to look at the things that we've experienced as blessings in disguise, and that's okay. But when or if you open up to looking at it from that contemplative vantage point, it might be interesting to see what arises within you from that practice. And number 4, what part of your story do you still wish to rewrite? What would happen if instead you chose to fully accept it? But give yourself permission in the beginning, before the second part of this question, to really let yourself start the writing process. Rough draft that story. What part of your story do you still wish to rewrite? Go ahead. It might reveal some really wonderful hidden gems on what your values are, what's important to you, and where you feel out of alignment with what's showing up in your experience. Because it's not something we really want to hear, but obviously something in each one of us is in alignment with the areas that we are less than thrilled about. So we might as well give the floor to those parts and let their perception, their input be known. It doesn't mean it has to be the final answer, but why not hear what's going on underneath some of these areas of our life that we would prefer to be different? And if it feels scary to do that, then consider where you might have developed a belief system that allowing all aspects of yourself to exist and be received is dangerous. And how did you become convinced of that? And are you willing to question that instead of assuming that it's a truth? Because so many of the things that we speak of as truths are really just opinions, perceptions, beliefs, and ideas. When you really, really get down to the most non-negotiable truths in life, I think that those are very few things. That's why we live in a world of exceptions, to remind us how few truths there really are. And then if you'd like to do an exercise to accompany the content in this chapter and workbook, the exercise for this one is the acceptance shift. This exercise can help release resistance and shift you into an empowered perspective. Step number 1 is identify one aspect of your life that you currently struggle with or wish were different. Then close your eyes and imagine that before incarnating, you intentionally wrote this experience into your story for a powerful reason. What lesson, growth, or insight might this experience be offering you? Breathe deeply and say aloud, I accept and embrace this part of my story. I accept and embrace this part of my story. I trust that it is unfolding perfectly for my highest good. And again, remember that your highest good isn't separate from you. This continuity, this continuation, self to self, this self with the small s that's finite, has a name, has an address, has a backstory, and then the infinite self that is totality and beyond words, that which is before form. And the final part of this exercise is just noticing any shifts in how you feel. And repeat the practice whenever resistance arises. And maybe you don't initially feel anything positive from doing this practice. Maybe it just feels like more daunting content to sift through, more challenging emotions to navigate, revealing to you the discord that exists within you that's playing most of the time in the background because you have a lot of things I'm sure that you need to do and take care of and commitments to fulfill. So when you're giving it your attention, it comes to the foreground and you're with it very directly during these exercises and practices, which isn't making it stronger. It's just making it more dominant in that moment in your experience because you're giving it your attention, focus. You're making an observation of this. And that's why at times it can feel like it's getting stronger. The quote for contemplation is a quote from my book, The All-Inclusive Approach. You are fulfilling the fantasy that consciousness crafted uniquely for you as you. Can you imagine the freedom in embracing it? And that's the practice really for us to continue with until the next chapter is, can you imagine the freedom of embracing all of the things that you experience and what your experience of those experiences is? I emphasized in the beginning that the all-inclusive approach begins and ends with you accepting of what your experience of things is, and also accepting the level of responsibility and power and freedom that you have to guide your interpretation and perception of reality. Both of those things are true. And the playground or nightmare that we are operating within any given day is giving us plenty of food for thought around this. It's giving us a lot of input. Okay, you probably know what I'm going to say now. If you want to leave a comment, by all means, please do. I look forward to reading whatever you have to share. And I will connect with you again in chapter 8. Until then, be well and enjoy the now.